Hello, everyone. I'm very welcome to this month's History Club. My name is Joe Walsh, and History Club is in partnership with Here and I, Car Friend, and the Rainbow Project, and the Linen Hall Library. And it's all made possible with funding from the Lottery Heritage Fund. And this month, we are talking with the fabulous Robert May, who's going to take us through a snapshot of the 80s and maybe the early 90s if we're lucky, if we've got time. We've got such a small amount of time and so much to squeeze into it. And after that, then we're going to have some time for audience questions, and you can ask the questions, and Robert will do his very best to answer those. So we're going to get stuck right in. And Robert, you're going to take us back to the early days because we asked you to come on board because we're interested in getting people capturing our early history, people's personal history
Oh yeah.
before it gets lost, because it's never really recorded anywhere. And as our slogan is behind us here, recording and preserving our history and heritage
Yes.
before that all goes away. So you were around in some of the early days of Pride.
This is how you know you're getting old.
Yeah, when you're part of history.
When you become a stately homo.
So what, and back in the early days was the 80s, when you were involved.
Oh my God, the 80s were just fabulous anyway.
Yep.
Even if you were gay. I mean, look at Duran Duran, all the groups, everybody was wearing makeup. It was a wee bit like a throwback to some of the iconic. You had like David Bowie and T-Rex and all, where you had that gender ambivalence thing. So people, guys were wearing makeup and so on. But yeah, in the 80s, the music was amazing. The Times in Belfast, now obviously we had this ongoing, let's say here, situation. So you had the bombs going off and whatever, and it was a bit grim in places, but um, when you were young and you kind of block that out, and you were looking for fun, you were looking for excitement, and you didn't care where you had to go to find it.
So what sort of places did you go? Where
Well,
was
you
you?
see, I was totally clueless. In the early days, it wasn't political, so therefore I wasn't involved in any of the sort of um, groups that I then became aware of in later years. Had no idea, and I, I met someone who knew someone, and I ended up being taken to the Crow's Nest one night. Um, and then from there, I discovered the Carpenters, which was a wee club. But this was completely new. I do my one abiding memory of the Carpenters. The first night I walked in there, when we finally got through the wee green door, and they were happy enough that we were queer enough to come in. Was just this sense of, oh my God, the place was heaving. No aircon. It was like probably a building that should have been and probably was about to fall down anyway, but it was part of a redevelopment site. This was before the cathedral quarter became a thing. This was a wee shady dark place, but you went in there and it was pumping. It was absolutely, and you just looked around and went, so many people, and you just felt immediately at home, and you didn't realize that there were so many of us about.
So how did you find out about it?
It was through a friend of a friend.
Right.
It wasn't, I mean, there was no social media. You didn't have Facebook or whatever. This was literally, I just fell into.
You had to be in the
Yeah,
know.
you had to be in the know, basically. So the Crow's Nest then became a regular. So you go down to Crow's Nest, you bring your wee carry out with you, because the Carpenters was it was a club, but they didn't do alcohol. So you brought your little carry out with you. That went behind the counter in the Crow's Nest, and somehow or other the bar staff knew exactly whose bag was whose. So whenever they closed at 10 o'clock or whatever it was, you got your bag and then you head it round and down this wee narrow alley. I think it was called Long Lane. Correct me if I'm wrong. You headed down there, wrapped in the big green door. If they knew you, in you went, and then that was you for the night. The only thing you had to buy was your mixers, and you could have had tea, you could have had sausage rolls or whatever.
Wow.
I'm sure anyone had sausage rolls in there. But no, it was lovely. It was lovely.
So is this, are we talking, this is back in the time when you would have been searched by the army and things coming into city
Oh,
centre?
One could only dream. No, that's a story for another day. No.
This was after that?
No, well, no, in and around the same time, because I can remember I lived over in BT7. So coming over here was, I had to get a bus into town. The bus dropped you off, and then you had this long, lonely walk through an empty city, because in those days the town sort of shut down around about 5:30, 6 o'clock. The gates were locked and there was nobody, there was no shops, there was no shop windows lit up or anything. It was like a ghost town. And you would sort of come in through either a turnstile. No, you usually left by a turnstile. So you'd have come in through, you might have got frisked by a soldier that grunted at you and it'd walk past. But you'd have headed down and you could actually hear your footsteps in the city centre. And it really sort of probably 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. It was bizarre.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I know. And you were, well, I was more sort of conscious of getting sort of jumped on by, you know, muggers or something like that. But
I suppose
it was
probably,
probably a safer time, actually.
yeah, because everyone had to come through the security.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, it was one of the weird things I do remember from back in the day. And then that was you back out of the turnstile, and then you find your way around the Crow's Nest. Everything pitch black. Most street lights were out for one reason or another. And then you sort of went up and you got there was a doorman on there, and then you went. And it was fairly busy, fairly busy.
so the Crow's Nest was a bar that you didn't bring your own drink there then?
Oh
you
God,
bought
no,
the drink?
but you were allowed to bring your carry out if you were going to the Crows, to the Carpenters. Now, the only night I could have managed at that time would have been a Saturday, because I was in a similar business as far as it was entertainment business. So therefore I didn't get the opportunity of being there every weekend, or, you know, so it was a hit and miss thing for me, really. There was another place up in Donegal Street called the Plaza, run by Ernie and Jim, two old guys. And it was a one-nighter. And if I was lucky enough to be working close to Belfast, my show would have ended at 11 o'clock. I'd have fired the gear into the van, got it up, parked it up, and got a taxi down to the Plaza, and it went on to, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning. Again, you had your wee carry out on best of crack, great music, just gay and lesbian and bi-curious and whatever. Place was minging. Nobody ever heard of a mop or a brush. You didn't care. That was back in those days.
Yeah, you had somewhere to go. That
You
was the
had somewhere to
important thing.
go, and it was a safe space, and you had a brilliant time, and quite often you would have met somebody. And in those days, you'd have gone home, and the only way you knew where you were, because another wee thing that we had then, it was us against them, as in the community, who everybody hated us, because we were sodomites, we were queers,
Fabulous.
we were all sorts. So therefore, it didn't matter if you were a Protestant or a Fenian or a Muslim or whatever. If you were gay and you were in that spot and you were good looking, you were fair game. So you would wake up in the morning, have a wee look out the window to see where you were, look at the flagstones on the check the color scheme.
So what were we talking about? So some
Well, I
things,
mentioned Jules.
Jules.
It was one of those sort of clubs. It was not a gay club per se, but it was in that sort of early 80s thing where everyone was quite happy to be fabulous.
Right.
I think the big thing in the early 80s and so on was that the gay thing became quite trendy and quite acceptable, and then sadly the AIDS thing came along, and all of a sudden people didn't want to touch us with a poo stick, and then Clause 28 came in, and so on and so forth, and everything just went downhill. So you know,
Credibility.
there was a bit of a high, and then boom, it was really not good.
Dark times then
Dark
for the
times.
community.
Mm-hmm.
So then I suppose bars, I can remember we were talking before we came on, and it said some of the bars were happy to be, they said they would be happy to take the custom.
Oh God, yeah. When I was running around touting for one-nighters, they would go like, I would say maybe a Hattawee bar that then either fell down, or because you really got the grottiest places, but they were happy to take you on. And you would say to them, like, this is what we can bring you on a night if you give us a night. And then they went, we'd love to do that, but we're afraid of the stigma.
The stigma.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're afraid of the stigma, then we're afraid not interested.
Yep. And yeah, this would have been a time when none of the bars would have advertised themselves.
Oh God, no! But sure, the Crow's Nest, for crying out loud, it was the best kept secret that everybody knew. Yeah. It wasn't a gay bar, but it was a gay bar.
It's an open secret.
You would have gone into the Crow's Nest at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the curtains would have been drawn, and the sun might have been blasting out of the sky, but they drew the curtains. And I remember one afternoon, I'd just gone in. I don't know why I was there. I don't normally do afternoon drinking, believe it or not. But I just happened to be there, and I said, "Why are you pulling the curtains? It's beautiful outside." And I went, "Don't want people seeing in."
So it's to protect the privacy of the customers.
Apparently.
Or prevent the stigma.
Or, you know, because people like myself might have been a tad obvious. Maybe propping up the bar with a pink t-shirt saying, "Eat me."
And so that would have been culturally the time of like the new romantics and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing.
So
yeah,
men wore makeup.
Yeah,
wouldn't have been a problem. And was that something that was beneficial for the community at that time? Because
no, it was just a sort of a what do you call it, gender fluidity or whatever. But it was just where guys were comfortable, and they didn't feel that if they looked a wee bit, in their words, sometimes poofy, it didn't matter. Nowadays, I mean, I was sitting in my flat the other day, and there was this guy coming down the road from head to toe in the powder pink. The guy must have been about 20 stone. And I thought, Jesus, I'm going to have to get off the wine. Just then. But I mean, if I had done that, you know, a lot of years ago, that guy would have got kicked the length and breadth.
Yes, I probably wouldn't have gotten into places because it was obviously.
It'd be like me and the Duke of York. I don't want your sort in here. And this is before the Duke of York now, but you know, there was a certain evil witch that ran it at one stage, and she had a wee bit of an issue with beautiful looking guys.
I just didn't want you in the place.
And still blocked me out. I can't understand.
Well, that's what it was like then. You would have been either not allowed into places or asked to leave.
Well, now the Crow's Nest, believe it or not, although they tolerated, I would say, because Bass owned it. It was a Bass house back in the day. I don't think they own anything now, but the management, which would have been either Brendan or Martin at the time, but if two guys were sort of getting a wee bit too cozy, they would have said, "Don't be kissing. Oh, it's supposed to be a gay bar. Or don't be holding hands. It's supposed to be a gay bar." You know?
So they had strict rules about behavior.
Well, yeah, they were a bit anal. Let's put it that way. For being right.
Okay. So we have here a taxi taxi driver
That's
putting
actually, yeah,
couples out for
I'm
this
not,
sort of-
now, we're not going back to the 80s here. I'm talking about whenever I worked in the Parliament, um, and that's the 90s. It wasn't uncommon to hear of a gay couple or a lesbian couple being put out of the taxi because the driver saw them kissing or getting a bit fond or close to one another in the mirror and said, right, get out of my car. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And in actual fact, I think not that long ago, maybe in the 2000s or something, there was there was somebody from Phonacab who had done something similar and was a whole big blow up. By this stage, you know, rights had started to actually mean something.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to do it.
And
like
it
that,
was actually publicized, but it had been going on for years. You know, whether you even got a blooming taxi from a gay bar. Quite often, a lot of people also because we're afraid, this whole identity thing, and because with employment and one thing and another, there's lots of issues, or maybe the fear of their family finding out. A lot of people would actually have left the bar, gone away round the corner to somewhere, and then phoned a taxi. Well, they didn't have a mobile phone. They'd have phoned a taxi and said, pick us up at such and such, but not outside a bar. But to be fair, I mean, I was talking to taxi drivers before and said, a lot of your ones get it to pick them up at the Albert Clock. What's that all about? Maybe it's a central spot.
and wasn't just taxis then. It was its general attitude and reporting in the press. Sometimes they
yeah. Oh God, I used to really get on my nerves. They would have a story, a gay issue, or even if it was a positive thing about gay people. And then on the same page, they would always manage to put some sort of a story about pedophiles or something, you know, molesters or whatever. And why do you put that in the same page? You know, it's almost as if you're saying, like, you know, we're doing this.
It's all in the same category.
Yeah, it was like I said, we're just lumping us all into one. It was just horrible. It really annoyed me. Maybe I'm too sensitive.
No, I think you're probably just aware of the way it was.
Possibly.
And then that probably takes us up to the Parliament days. What do you remember about the early days of the Parliament?
Early days of the Parliament, right? Okay, so we came off the back of the success of the Crow's Nest. What had happened there was I had started working. Now, I'm not putting myself down here as a success. What I'm saying is that things had just started to really happen. We were coming into a very positive time politically as well. The whole sort of peace agreement thing, we were looking like we were going to get a ceasefire. Everybody was feeling a lot more positive, and but the Crow's Nest was going well. We'd had this big competition, Stars in Your Eyes or something like that, that Martin, one of the managers, had come up with, and it worked a treat. And then him and his friend Brendan looked at you could not fit anybody into the Crow's Nest. It was just absolutely rammed. It had never been that mad. And they thought, there's a place around the corner, you know, again owned by Bass. So they went and had a word with them and then said, and then the Parliament arrived. They took the name from a bar in Dublin that had closed down. There was actually a Parliament somewhere in Dublin. I had never was there, but apparently that's where they got the idea for the name, which I guess is why whenever the Kremlin opened, they thought, well, we'll do the Oxford Hole. Which I thought was quite clever.
Yeah.
You know, and they were quite close to the reality, as it turned out. But so the Parliament was the first sort of really purpose-built venue. And this thing about the underground, I know we talk about, I mean, the Parliament was quite literally, you had a nightclub upstairs, you had a lovely loungy bar down there, that a decent sized kitchen. It was the first place you could actually bring, say, your mum or your dad or your friends, your family, and not be ashamed. I mean, the Crow's Nest was nice, but it was a wee bit shabby. You know, let's be honest. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't the Savoy. But the Parliament was just something else. So I was delighted with it. And whenever I started there, to be honest with you, I wanted that to be a huge success for our ones, the community. I knew it was two straight guys that ran it and whatever, but that didn't interest me. It's finally we had somewhere, you know, to come in. And my mantra always was that when you got to the door, no matter what your troubles were, no matter what your baggage was, you left it at the front door and you come in, and for the 3 or 4 hours you're there, you're just lose yourself, have a good time. And then
And the Parliament didn't mind advertising itself openly as a gay venue or gay friendly venue.
well, I don't know if they didn't mind or not, but there's no real choice in the matter.
It's just overtaken by fabulous now. But I've heard that there may have been some curtain closing at lunchtime when it was more of a straight crowd. Do you remember? Yes, do you remember that at lunchtime?
No.
They only wanted to be gay at night? Or...
No. The Parliament.
Yeah.
No, what happened was the Parliament was they did lunches, and there used to be, it's away now, it's just a car park, but there was a big office, and there was the unemployment benefits office. It was full of civil servants, and I think the majority of them would have come in, had their dinner and whatever. But I had put a poster up because we were, it was our 3rd year. So I had this poster with 3 gay and happy. Or did I say 3? Yeah, it was 3 gay and happy. It was our 3rd birthday. And when I came in one afternoon, I'll not mention who it was, but it wasn't Martin, it was the other one, had sellotaped a piece of paper over over the gay bit and gone "erd," so it was 3rd and happy. I went, what's that all about? Whipped it off. I whipped it off there. If people don't know this is a gay bar by now, then you know, catch yourself on.
Why was they're
still coming in here, they're still doing their you know, whether they're straight by or Martians, it didn't matter. They were coming in, spending money, eating meals, going away, and quite a lot of them were there in the evenings.
Okay.
So, but I think probably it was a hangover from their old Crow's Nest days that they hadn't quite, you know.
Yeah, they hadn't quite.
It takes straights an awful long time
to come out.
It really does. Honest to God, they're hard work.
And so then the Kremlin then opened in, is that 2000?
God, now you're asking.
We'll find out and we'll put it on the screen during the edit.
Okay, yes, I'll go. That's the date. Oh, well, I have to say a funny thing happened, right? Andre, I think it was Andre, one of the owners of the Kremlin, had invited me around to see this new place that he wanted me to work in. And it was about a week or so before the place was due to open. And so we're going, as you would do, you're sort of stepping over workmen, someone, you know, but doing plumbing or what do you call those things? The pint, you know,
the pumps in.
That sort of thing, yes. But I'm looking around here and I go, like, concrete floor, cement walls. I go, Jesus, he's opening in a week's time. So I'm saying, like, what do you do on the floors? Is it going to be carpet or linoleum? So he says, no, this is the finished floor. Apparently it was one of those polished concrete floors. Oh, right, okay. I said, the walls, what colour? He said, that's the finish. Right, I'm going to shut up now. Just let him take me in this tour before I lose my job, before he can start. Bloody bunker.
So you really worked in a lot of these bars and
oh God, yeah. At one stage there was hardly a bar I wasn't working in, but a girl has to make a crust.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like?
So what about your voluntary work? That would have been you were chair of Belfast Pride in it.
Oh God, yeah, that was a delight.
And maybe the 3rd year of Pride was that, or
Oh, I haven't a clue.
It's
I,
was,
I was sort of mooching around the edges, um, as you do. You know, that's how you start out. I mean, you go along, somebody says, "Oh, you should come along here," and I go like, "Oh, it's boring."
and then you get dragged in.
Yeah, and then you get further and further. And of course, me with being gobby, you know, the more you open your mouth, the more. Oh, you should do that.
Yep,
So,
you become
you know,
an accidental campaigner.
so you end up doing all sorts. But I mean, uh, glad, glad to be there. Glad to be gay.
So you were doing things like making placards and stuff for
Yeah, and oh, and you're talking in the early days, yeah.
yeah.
I can remember going to the Crows, Parliament and all that stuff was there, yeah. And we were doing placards and a couple of wonderful people. I can't try and remember their names now, but I'll not mention names in case people don't want their names mentioned. But anyway, we'd end up with these big placards and would sort of like, okay, think of a slogan, you know, so, and they would write, paint or write with a big marker and so on and so forth, you know, the night before or a couple of nights before Pride. It was just a community thing, and it was just raw, and it was just the way it should be. It's a protest, and it's so exciting. I mean, I can remember my first Pride, the buzz, your nerves, there's butterflies in your stomach, but just so glad I did it in my own home city. I think that my first Pride I did was Dublin, but my first home Pride I still hold dear,
Yeah.
and I would encourage anyone uh, to do it because you're taking control of your life and you're walking down your streets, and that's the way it should be, and you don't apologize to anyone, you know.
Yeah.
I can remember a couple of prides ago, you know, before we became really massive, and maybe we had about 2,000-3,000 on the parade, and I was doing marshal because as chair, you know, sort of general chief bottle washer and whatever. So I'm walking up the side of Castle Court, and the parade's going on, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the parade, and it's fabulous. But I was within earshot of these two out deers, and there must have been there. I'm going to say 70s to be kind, witches. But one of them turned and said, "Here, Sadie, I never knew there was so many of them." I thought, hello, happy days, we've arrived.
We've arrived. Quietly breathing in the background. Great. And one of the things that we have always put out a call for is photographs of we would love to have photographs of
Yeah.
places like Crow's Nest, but because of the stigma, as you
Well,
say,
it wasn't so much a stigma, it was the fear. An awful lot of folk, their jobs depended on their anonymity, and even teachers, for crying out loud.
yeah,
They could be sacked without any pension or anything. There's no comeback, no redress. So an awful lot of people were terrified. If you brought out a camera, you might as well have brought out a blooming shotgun or something. People would have just died for cover. So
that's
there
what
are
there's no,
pictures out there, I'm sure, and I would love if people, even within intimate groups, have got pictures of older sort of times and whatever. That's the one thing we're really, really short of.
yeah,
I did. Now I had quite a few pictures. I sort of what I had, I'd sent them down to Pride 3-4 years ago maybe, and they did a lovely exhibition along with other stuff. So there are some pictures around, but
they're
it's
scarce.
real. Oh my God, it's rare as hen's teeth. But I can understand why. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the same whenever when Pride started to become more noticeable, and then the anti-sodomite crowd started kicking off, and they were absolutely amazing. You see, if it hadn't been for those sad buggers, Pride probably wouldn't have got half the coverage that it got. We could not have afforded to even put an advert in the paper. So we're talking like pre-Facebook almost. But we got all this free press from the BBC, UTV, radios, you name it, who came to see the Reverend, somebody of us on ours has said this about you lot. Have you got a response? Yes, I do. And because I was lucky, I'm very charmed. Like I was able to not worry about being sacked. I think to be a DJ or anybody in entertainment, it's probably a requisite that you should be at least gay, at least, So therefore, being self-employed, it'd be quite difficult to sack myself for being an old poof. So
Yeah.
I had no fear that way. So I could then, and I did quite happily. I went on and did interviews with the newspapers, the TV, the radio, whatever.
And was that the Save Ulster from Sodomy campaign?
Oh, absolutely, dear. I
Nice.
said yes, and save one for me.
Okay, I've got something in the comments there.
Oh, dear.
Someone's mentioned Lamba Cinema. Do you remember that?
Lamba Cinema?
Yep.
What? Lamba Cinema? Doesn't ring a bell. I need
No.
more information.
Okay, we'll get more information on that at the end.
I mean, there are. I'm hold my hand up and say there would have been lots and lots of stuff going on that I would not be privy to because I'd spent so much time traveling here, there, and everywhere with my work that it was only whenever I sort of finally settled in Belfast to do the gay bars proper that then I became properly involved and then started to I met wonderful people who've been campaigning for years and I got educated on a lot of stuff. I mean, the things like you would never have known, like the like of it's now called Biddles. It's the family that own the bar, but it used to be known as the Shakespeare Bar back in the day. And apparently in the 70s, there was actually quite a gay drag scene there.
Right.
With Miss May and God, I'm trying to remember his name now. He was the director of Peter Quigley, and a whole lot of others. Now Peter sadly has passed on, but he was the director of the Arts Theatre in Botanic Avenue for many years. But I knew nothing about that. That's when it's in the history thing and anecdotal or whatever. It's lovely to discover wee nuggets of information I got.
Absolutely.
And this is why this project is just so important.
Yes, absolutely.
It's quickly, we've lost an amazing font of information with P.A. McLaughlin.
Yeah.
P.A. And he had records and boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff stored in his home, all sorts of stuff that so it is what it is, but if we can sort of gather up some of the threads, who knows, we could maybe, like a web, we could maybe find other people who go, oh, I know what he's saying.
Put it all together. That's what we're hoping with the project.
Well, I mean, I know for a fact there are probably people listening tonight, and if they're not listening tonight, maybe on YouTube, who are going to actually say, well, I actually remember that, but they know more about it than I do.
Yep. Get in touch with us.
I'm in no way a font of information here. I'm just babbling.
But it's important to babble for historic reasons.
Absolutely.
More in the comments, and we have Alhambra Cinema.
Alhambra
was later. Ernie and Jim's Disco in North Street, and
yes, that's the one. Oh, I said Donegal Street. I thought it was no. It's opposite where it's near the front page. It was Donegal Street. North Street's no. Ernie and Jim.
No, North Street. This side of Donegal Street, isn't it? It's separated by.
Well, anyway, but yeah, the plaza. It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
And Sue Ellen was one of the queens.
Yes, I think Sue Ellen and Liz Taylor
Liz Taylor.
Liz Taylor, another uh, icon of the 80s, I'm going to say early 80s. I think Liz was the first drag queen on the first Pride Parade, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. And she was in the car, and then eventually thought, okay, I might get out here. So she got out and stuck her heels on and dandered up Botanic Avenue.
So we've had drag queens from the very first
Oh
Pride.
God, yeah,
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 they've been
absolutely.
involved from
Yeah.
day one.
Maybe maybe singular, not so much plural, but yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they were represented.
I
At
mean,
least.
that was another thing. I mean, this is, that was a few people that got together and said, right, okay, London have had Pride for a while. Why don't we have one? And apparently, I wasn't there because I was away working, but people thought, I don't know, why not? And it just happened.
Yeah, I think probably everybody was. It's one of those things. Everybody was waiting for
Somebody.
somebody to
See,
organize it.
this is what always used to bug me. You'd always hear somebody or people saying, somebody should do something about that. And I go, guess what your name is?
Somebody.
Somebody.
You are the somebody.
Go and do it.
Brilliant. Is there anything that sticks out in your memory from back in the day, in particular? Like in terms of hate crime or even something positive or funny that when you think back you remember fondly?
Well, hate crime, as in, do you get a kicking or?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had a few of those.
Was Belfast bad for hate crime back
Uh,
then, do you think?
You see, this is the thing. Belfast was, and then it got a wee bit better. And what we need to sort of, even though this is a historical podcast or whatever, we've got to remember that history has a horrible way of repeating itself. So we need to keep an eye on levels of violence and so on and so forth, because I mean, Elton John just recently said that the homophobia is on the rise, and I've no reason to disbelieve him. We've had a massive insurgence of ultra right wing governments. I'm not going to go political because some of your listeners may get offended, but I'm not mad about the current government we have in the UK. So, when I say alt-right, I mean, you don't have to look too far. And the erosion of rights, as hard as it's taken and as long as it's taken to actually achieve those rights, they could just as easily be snapped away.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the right to protest.
It's under threat.
And who's to say within another couple of wee strokes of the pen that, coming out with a rainbow flag could be seen as some sort of a provocative act.
It's possible. Yeah,
I told you about that thing. Oh my God, what was it? I can't remember what Pride it was. I'd just got back home. I'd been working till 3 a.m. in the morning or something like that. I got this phone call at like stupid o'clock in the morning. It must have been 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Hello, this is so and so from BBC World Service. I go, hello, do I know you? Says, what's your reaction to the fact that the Belfast Pride is the first pride in the world to be deemed a contentious parade? What?
You were waking up out of your sleep to be.
I was rudely aroused out of my sleep. But yeah, so I mean, this is what I'm saying. You can't take anything for granted. All of a sudden, we then had to start going through the whole Parades Commission thing, and that was down to some wee rule that doesn't appear anywhere else. But the only Pride parade in the world, well, the ones that parts of the world that actually allow a Pride parade, but the only one that was actually deemed contentious.
Wow.
But you know what? They did us a favour again, and again, it was down to the free peas or all the other ding dongs, the dingalings. That was the biggest pride we had that year. I think we brought 4 or 5 thousand people on the street because everybody was absolutely outraged at the very suggestion that a pride parade should be deemed a contentious parade. So they actually swelled, I think, is that right? Or swelled? No, they swelled our numbers.
Well, that's probably more than once that they've done that over the
God,
years.
yes.
Uh,
Well, no, I mean, if it wasn't for the anti-sodomite crowd, I mean, we probably would have been still in the obscure backwater, because I mean, the press didn't really want to know,
yeah.
you know. So it was all good. There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, I've heard that, and it seems to be true.
Uh-huh.
That's amazing, Robert. That's a really brief account, but thank you. It's been a very insightful, and there's probably lots of memories that have come up there for people during the course of this conversation. So we're going to open it up just for a few questions before we finish. If anybody would like to ask Robert or myself some questions, I'll do my very best to answer them. You can unmute your device and ask them verbally, or you can put them into the chat there. Anybody got any questions or even comments or memories?
You said there about the Kremlin when did it open? It opened towards the end of '98 because that was the year I came out.
Oh,
Right.
Okay. Well, we weren't sure. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't even know what I was doing last week.
Thank you for that. Yes, I had 99 in the back of my head, but there's a huge timeline that I have to try and memorize. But thank you for that. So it was 1998.
We've got all the stories and all the facts, not necessarily in the right order. My bad.
So does anybody else have questions or
I don't
comments?
think there's any point in putting.
Yeah, Robert. You've spun quite a lot of records in your time. What was your most requested track, or your one you were pestered about the most?
Oh, I recognize that voice. No, I'm thinking Bucks Fizz. I'm really teasing. It would depend, because the music, especially pop music, it's bubblegum. And when you're on, and especially within the gay environment, music sort of came in to us first and then went on further. But by the time we were tired with something, it was only hitting the charts or whatever. So but I'm just gonna lie and say ABBA, because I love ABBA.
Who doesn't?
Brilliant. Great question.
Robert, can I ask? I mean, thank you for that. But were you working at the Parliament when we used to have the Free Presbyterian protesters outside it on a Saturday night?
Yes.
Yeah.
You sent them
Which
out
was an awful.
Sent them out a wee tray of tea, because the wee dears have been there. I think we were bringing, was it Mr. Gay UK or something? We were doing a heat upstairs in the nightclub, which was due to hit around about 11 a.m., which was way past their bedtime. And they were out, I bless them, from about 6 o'clock in the evening. So we arranged to send them out a wee tray with some tea and hot cross buns or something, you know. Yes. Oh God, I do remember them. Oh, bless them.
And the Brendan and Martin, did they interact with them and try and move them on, or were they happy for them?
Oh God, no. I mean, the thing was that they were very well behaved, for starters. They were on that little island, so you had the road in front of the Parliament, which was perfectly clear for taxis or whatever to get up and down. Hill Street, which is the wee narrow street, they couldn't have stayed there because they would have got run over. So where they were there with their wee hymn books and whatever and singing, but they weren't actually really all that threatening as such, you know. Obviously, I mean, if some young person came around the corner, they'd probably go flip and then run away again, going around the crow's nest and waited. But yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Thanks for reminding me. That's what I'm saying. You see, the thing is that I can only remember so much.
Yeah.
But hopefully folk will actually then start to, yeah, it's
Remember.
like a tapestry almost.
Yes.
If we can get everybody to come together, because you're going to remember things that maybe were more significant to you than whatever, and hopefully we can build up a really good picture
Yeah.
of the events and all. And thank you, I'd forgotten all about those lovely people.
Thanks.
I don't actually remember this bar, but I remember people talking about it, telling me about it later. There was a room bar called the Chariot Rooms.
Chariot Rooms. Oh no, well that was again, as you can see, I was way too young for the likes of that. I did hear about that. Now I think that was in Donegal Street, I think.
Yes.
I
Royal
did-
Avenue. No, Robert, I think I was in Royal Avenue, the Chariot Rooms.
Oh, was it? It was a
It was a
bus,
hotel,
or it
yeah.
was a bar, but
The plaza was in Donegal Street. We had the Delta
yeah,
and facing the cathedral, and then Carpenter's was round the corner.
round the back. Was that Long?
Yeah,
Was that Long Lane?
Yes, yes, I think you're right. Yeah, and you had the Red Barn as well.
Yes, the Red
Um,
Barn was also a wee bit of a glade.
And the big Orpheus, do you remember the Orpheus down at York Street?
Uh-huh.
It was good. Yeah. So I
The-
suppose things came and went, but yeah,
But Orpheus, now you talking about the wee bar on the corner?
the big club that Bob ran, do you remember down at
Well, no, believe it or not, I actually there was a gay bar there years before Bob.
okay, okay.
Myself and another guy, Ian, ran it for about 2.5 years.
Yes.
And the owners, they were just two big lazy farts from the Malone Road. They ran up so much debt that we ended up having to shut up shop because we couldn't bail them out.
Okay. Hey, yeah.
Yeah, and then Bob about 4 years later or more, maybe, God no, maybe a lot more. Bob came along with the Pink Beach Club or something, wasn't it? Was it called the Pink Beach Club? I think
Yes, that's right. Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
Bob took it on then. It lasted for about a year or so. But yeah, there's been a lot of wee places that have popped up and disappeared, but
I remember the Orpheus, when you were talking about it, was the first, other than the Crows, it was the first bar that I went to, and it was down the bottom of York Street. And I do remember knocking on a metal door, and one of the guys who eventually became a friend, you know, it was like opening up, only for the fact my first girlfriend was with me. They recognized her. They weren't going to let me, let me in.
yeah,
But like you said about the other place you were talking about, Robert, I mean, the floor was sticky to be damned. And I mean, I heard rumors that the two guys who owned it kept watering down the drinks. You
What was-
know, I
Orpheus.
think Ethan used to DJ there years ago. I don't know who the other DJ was there, but Ethan used to DJ there.
Ethan in the Orpheus, York Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, would he have been with Bob? Or what year we're looking at?
I came out in around 89, so it must have been sort of 89, 90 sort of time. So it was.
Brian's just saying there in the chat that the Chariot Rooms, formerly the Alhambra Cinema,
Ah, that's where the Alhambra thing
Was-
came from. Ah,
yeah.
okay, okay.
was
Mhm.
in North Street.
Okay.
I thought so, because
So
yeah,
there's
it
more
was-
information about all these secret places on the Heritage Tour. So if anybody wants to join that, there's one on Pride Day. It's in the Pride Guide. Just email history@hereani.org and get on the Heritage Tour. Mary Ellen and Jude will take you around and give you all of the information that they have. They've done some amazing research on these places.
Good. Cool.
What about Slosh? How did you start Slosh up in the Whites?
Oh yeah, that again, that was one of those things. I was working in Parliament at the time, and their Wednesday night was like a band night, a live music night, and somebody had said to me, would you consider doing a one-nighter? And I said, of course. And the reason, it wasn't that I was looking for extra work or anything, it was just that there was very little choice really for gay venues as such. They said, well, we've got this place, White's Tavern. I went, where the hell is that? I've never heard of it. You know what I mean? But anyway, so actually on the first flyers, I had to put a wee map on the back.
Such a sheltered existence you had.
I know, but I mean, even our wee patrons would have had difficulty finding it. You
Yeah,
know, it was,
Down
it
the wee
was,
entry.
yeah. I mean, it was a wee rustic bar off the down a wee dark alleyway, and not many of our girls would go down a wee dark alleyway. Well, not with a promise or something. But so no, that happened, and my rationale for doing it, and I had a lot of flack from the Parliament, the guys that ran it, because they said, "Oh, you can't do that, you can't do that." And I said, hold on a wee minute. I said, "Do you want us to come to your bar 7 nights a week? Would you go to your bar 7 nights a week?" I said, why can't we have a bit of choice and, you know, the freedom to say, well, I'll go here, I'll go there. You know, so that was, anyway, it all happened and it was all good. But
Well, there's a grimy story in the chat, Cara. I ruined a shirt in the Orpheus as I leaned against a mouldy wall.
oh yeah, you're not wrong.
Ew.
You're not wrong. The problem, the Orpheus was actually, when I was there, it was a victim of its own success. The building had been blown up. Well, you know, because the co-op, the old co-op is across the street from us, and obviously somebody had planted something, a device the wrong way, but the Orpheus got it, and then we rebuilt it, and the building that we then sort of took on, the upstairs, it had been built to withstand blasts. There was this thing, thank God that we're doing anymore, big solid walls, no windows, tin roof. And the idea was that if somebody came in and put a device on the counter, it would go up through the roof, and the building would still be fine. But it didn't make for, like, there was no such thing as aircon or any of that stuff. And I dare say that at the building it had a few people in it, was fine, but it was rammed. It was just so popular. It was bunged. And these office tiles, that was the ceiling. So they got damp, and occasionally some of them would fall down. It was an absolute health and safety nightmare. I hold my hands up, but I mean, I didn't own the building. It was nothing to do with me. The two guys that owned it lived up the Malone Road, didn't give a damn, and made plenty of money out of it.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yes, you probably would have ruined a shirt. But then again, in most gay clubs, you'd have ruined a shirt before the smoking ban came in, because if some wee queen saw you in a beautiful shirt and had a cigarette and would just accidentally on purpose go, "Oh, sorry, love." That wasn't unheard of.